Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
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 Yashodanandana Vrajajaranjana
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 Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Yamuna Tiravanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari
Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravrajacharya Sri Srimad Grace of Vai Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Koda Nitai Mayapur Shashi Ki Jai Nitai Gaur do we need this, the lavalier microphone? Or is this enough? Okay. So is tonight full moon? I thought last night was full moon. Anyone know?
I thought it was last night.
Okay. Anyway. Okay, so so on the Vaishnav calendar today there are some nice occurrences which we can just read about, just to help us to establish the right meditation. So, and also, it's not mentioned, am I reading from this thing where it says installation anniversary of Kota Nitai Mayapur Shashi, am I reading?
I don't know. We already went through it, so I guess we can skip it. We already did the whole thing about installation, so you can skip that one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the write-up, it's probably missed that too. Anyway, today's the anniversary of the installation of Kota Nitai Mayapur Shashi. So Ram Navami was the anniversary of their appearing in Scotland, and then, like Prabhupada Prabhu was explaining the other day, he arrived back from Sankirtan to find devotees in the driveway, telling him, okay, get the bus ready. So everything was unexpected. So they hadn't. I wasn't here actually at the time. Janet was here and Vrinda was here. I think that's it. That's here in the temple room now. I left. I was here up until about 2 months before they came, and then I kind of took a short break, and then they dragged me back again once they arrived. So I wasn't here when they actually appeared, but because they arrived unexpectedly, then there was a week from their arriving to their being installed on the altar, because they had to make an altar, amongst other things. So today is the anniversary of their actual installation. So today is Sri Balaram Rasayatra. Is Krishna Vasant Ras usually on the same day as Balaram Rasayatra? Don't know. Okay, so Balaram Rasayatra. So as Krishna performs his Rasa Leela in the spring on Vaisakha Purnim, Balaram also performs Rasa dance at this time separately with his own gopis. So in order to keep the gopis of, this is from Krishna book, in order to keep the gopis of Vrindavan satisfied, Lord Balaram stayed there continually for 2 months, namely the months of Chaitra and Vaisakha. For those 2 months he kept himself among the gopis, and he passed every night with them in the forest of Vrindavan in order to satisfy their desire for conjugal love. Thus Balaram also enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis during those 2 months. So Krishna has his gopis and Balaram has his, and they perform separate rasa dances and separate pastimes. We don't read so much, we don't hear so much about Lord Balaram's exchanges with his gopis, but they are there, and this is one occasion when he dances with the gopis. And then today is also Sri Krishna Vasant Ras. So does that mean that this is Vaisakh Purnim? Because it said as Krishna performs his Rasa Leela in the spring on Vaisakh Purnim, and then today is Vasant Ras. So is it referring to the same thing, or is it two separate occasions? Do you know about these things? Anyone? Okay, anyway, I'll just read it as it is, and anyone that's interested can do their own research. So, Sri Krishna Vasant Rasa, Lord Krishna's spring Rasa Leela pastime. On this full moon night, the devotees usually leave out pots of sweet rice for the Lord to enjoy during his rasas. I've got a story about that. You remember? Were you there? Were you there at the time? Shall I tell the story? Or you want to tell the story? we used to have a motorhome. We used to have a few motorhomes, and the travelling Sankirtan party, they one of their vehicles. We had 2 vehicles. We had a car and a motorhome, and we were living in a Sankirtan house down in Yorkshire. And then every 2 weeks we would drive up on Saturday night back to the temple. Every second Saturday, we'd get back here at 9 o'clock at night, and then we'd stay until Monday morning, and then leave again and go away for another 2 weeks of Sankirtan. So it just so happened that at this particular year, the spring rasa dance took place on the Sunday night. So the devotees made this huge pot of sweet rice, and it's tradition that it gets left outside overnight in a place where Krishna can come with the gopis and take the sweet rice. So it's usually put on an elevated place, so it's kept safe, you know. So anyway, we were here for the weekend, and then Monday morning we got in the motorhome. Some of us got in the motorhome, some of us got in the car, and then we drove off. And we drove halfway, usually, because it's quite a long drive, it's usually at least 3 hours, usually more like 4 hours, to the Sankirtan spot that we would do, because we would go somewhere on the way, somewhere like Leeds or Liverpool or somewhere like that, Preston, Lancaster. We would drive down, do Sankirtan on the Monday, and then drive back to the Sankirtan house on Monday evening. So because it's a long drive, we usually had to stop at the service station on the way because devotees needed the bathroom. So we got to the services, went in to use the bathroom, and we're walking back to the motorhome, And Gadruma just said, "What the hell is that on top of the motorhome?" So we'd driven all the way down south with this huge pot of sweet rice that was meant for the entire Scottish Yatra, and it was just and it was there for the Sankirtan devotees. So we got back that night, and Prabhupada Vani, who was the temple president of the phone, he phoned up. He said, "Did you find anything?" And Gadruma said, "Yep, we did." And apparently there were a lot of very, very unhappy devotees up here, and there were about 5 very, very happy devotees down in Yorkshire who had enough sweet rice to keep them going for about 3 days. So that was Krishna's blessings on us. So it's also the appearance day of Vamsi Vedanta Thakur. When Vamsi Vedanta Thakur appeared, Lord Chaitanya and Sri Advaita Prabhu were staying at his home. After the disappearance of Srimati Vishnu Priya Devi, he moved her Mahaprabhu deity to Koladweep, present-day city of Navadweep. He began worshipping him along with Pranavallabha, a deity of Krishna. Vamsi Vadan wrote wonderful poems and songs expressing the philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. He was also the incarnation of Lord Murli Manohar's flute, Vamsi. So Murli Manohar is Krishna who plays a flute. Murli means flute, right? Murli. Yeah, Murli means flute. We have some devotees may know the head pujari in Soho Street. His name is Murli Manohar. So Murli Manohar's flute, Vamsi. So it's not surprising that Vamsi Vedanta Thakur's words contain sweet, mellow expressions of devotion. There's beautiful verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam where the gopis are expressing some transcendental envy towards Krishna's flute, because they're always hoping that Krishna's going to give them a kiss, but Krishna's kissing his flute all day long by playing on his flute. So it's very sweet. Sri Shamananda Pandit, feeling very sad, Dukhi means sad, Sukhi means happy, and Dukhi means sad. Feeling very sad, Dukhi, over losing several children before his birth, his parents named him Dukhi Krishna Datta. Dukhi Krishna Dada. Upon taking Diksha from Hridai Chaitanya, he became known as Krishna Das. In Vrindavan, he joined Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivas Acharya to study the Goswami books under Sri Jiva Goswami. While living in Vrindavan, Krishna Das regularly swept the streets before dawn. He performed this humble service so that the Vaishnavas would not hurt their feet while walking to the temples. One morning he found a captivatingly beautiful golden ankle bell. It doesn't mention it here, but this actually took place in Sevakunja. So Sevakunja is the place where the Rasa Leela, the Rasa dance, takes place. So it's interesting, he appears on the same day. So he was in the area where the Rasa dance takes place, and he was sweeping, and then he found this beautiful golden ankle bell. When Lalita and Vishaka Sakis asked for the ankle bells, Krishnadas said he would only give it to the original owner. So Lalita and Vishaka, they appeared kind of in disguise. They didn't reveal who they were. Because in Vrindavan, in Boma Vrindavan, everything that's happening in Apricot Vrindavan is also taking place in Boma Vrindavan, but we can't necessarily perceive it with our eyes. But it's happening. So the Rasa dance is taking place and all the pastimes are taking place. So we sometimes hear of these exalted devotees, and it's like the personalities, the eternal associates and residents of Vrindavan, they sort of step through from one realm, from the uppercut realm, into Boma Vrindavan and have exchanges and interactions with the devotees. So the night before, the Rasa dance had taken place, and then Srimati Radharani had lost her ankle bell. And Shamananda, he found it, or Krishna Das as he was known at that time, he found the ankle bell in the area where the Rasa dance had taken place. And then Lalita and Vishaka, they came from the Apricot realm into Boma Vrindavan realm to speak to Krishna Das and said, you know, our mistress has left an ankle bell have you found it? And it doesn't mention it here, but it said that Krishnadas could just kind of perceive that these are not ordinary people, and this is not an ordinary ankle bell. I want to know who's the real owner. And so he said, well, you have to send your mistress personally. She has to come and ask personally, because he had this idea of whose it was. So blindfolding Krishnadas, the gopis brought him to Srimati Radhika. They took the blindfold off once they were face to face, but it was like they were taking him on a secret route so that he could meet her face to face. She allowed him to put the bells on her ankle, but before fastening it, Krishnadas reverentially touched it to his forehead. This left a new tilak mark, which now distinguishes all of Shamananda's followers. So their tilak, it's similar to ours, but the tulsi leaf is it's an outline. So the tilak goes straight down like this and round, but it's not filled in. Here it says that he touched it to his forehead, but in another description of this pastime, it said that Radharani herself pressed it to his head and gave him that tilak mark. So when you go, who's been to Radha Shamasundar temple? You been, Javat? Can't remember. Raghunath, you ever been? Radha Shamasundar temple? It's so sweet. It's one of the nicest places. I had this wonderful experience one morning. I got lost. I went for a morning walk and I got completely lost, and then I ended up in Loy Bazaar, and Loy Bazaar is where Seva Kunj is, and it's also where all the temples are of the Goswamis. And on one road you have the Radha Damodar temple, and then further up the road on the right hand side is the Radha Shamasundar temple, and then across the road on the left hand side is where the Shalagram temple is. So it must have been around about 6 o'clock in the morning, but for some reason the door was open, and I just walked in innocently, and the whole place was deserted, and the altar was open, and the pujari was painting Shamasundar's face, and I just spent an hour on my own just sitting there chanting japa, watching the pujari paint Shamasundar's face. Really, really sweet moment. Rejoicing over Krishna Das's transcendental fortune, Sri Jiva Goswami awarded him the name Shamananda, one who pleases Srimati Radharani, or the servant of Shamasundar, Krishna. Sometime after Hridai Chaitanya's disappearance, he reappeared in a dream telling Shamananda to preach. With the help of his foremost disciple, Rasikananda, Shamananda profusely spread the worship and service of Gaura Nityananda all over Orissa. And one thing it doesn't mention here, it mentions that he joined Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivas Acharya to study the Goswami books under Sri Jiva Goswami. But those three, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya and Shamananda Prabhu, they're also famous for something else. Anyone know?
The first book distribution party.
Yeah, that was the first ever travelling book distribution party. Jiva Goswami sent them with the original manuscripts of the books of the Goswamis, the books of Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. He sent them first of all to Bengal, where copies could be made, and then they sort of broke into three different groups. And it says here, Shamananda went to Orissa, feel inspired to distribute books, then these three devotees, you can pray to them and they'll give you many, many blessings. Okay, so do we have time for a class? So Sri Shamananda Prabhu ki jai, Vamsi Vedanta Thakur ki jai, Sri Krishna Vasandaras ki jai, Sri Balaram Rasayatra ki jai, Sri Sri Kodanitai Maya Pashashi ki jai. Thanks. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 11. Jad Bharat instructs King Rahugana, text number 11. We're quite short for time, so I'll just go through the Sanskrit and the translation. Dravya swabhavasaya kamakala ekadashami manaso vikara sahasrasha shatasa kotishascha Shetragyatona mitona swatasyu. Okay, just quickly. Dravya, by physical objects. Swabhava, by nature as the cause of development. Ashaya, by culture. Karma, by predestined resultant actions. Kalai, by time. Ikadasha, 11. Ami, all these. Manasa, of the mind. Vikara, transformations. Sahasrasha, in thousands. Shatasha, in hundreds. Kotishacha, and in millions. Shetragyata, from the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Na, not. Mita, one another. Na, nor. Swata, from themselves. Syu, are. Translation. The physical elements, nature, the original cause, culture, destiny, and the time element are all material causes. Agitated by these material causes, the 11 functions transform into hundreds of functions, and then into thousands, and then into millions. But all these transformations do not take place automatically by mutual combination. Rather, they are under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One should not think that all the interactions of the physical elements, gross and subtle, that cause the transformation of mind and consciousness are working independently. They are under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Krishna says that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Savasya chaham hridi sanavishto matas mritir jnanam apohanam cha. As mentioned herein, Supersoul, Kshetragya, is directing everything. The living entity is also Kshetragya, but the Supreme Kshetragya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the witness and order giver. Under his direction, everything takes place. The different inclinations of the living entity are created by his own nature or his expectations, and he is trained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of material nature. The body, nature, and the physical elements are under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They do not function automatically. Nature is neither independent nor automatic. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is behind nature. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetunanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and non-moving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. The physical elements, nature, the original cause, culture, destiny, and the time element are all material causes. Agitated by these material causes, the 11 functions transform into hundreds of functions, and then into thousands, and then into millions. But all these transformations do not take place automatically by mutual combination. Rather, they are under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastichade Shatarane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, it's interesting how there's this impression that some people have of ancient cultures and ancient civilizations. There's this very stereotypical view that people must have been very, very primitive. Like a very sort of simple and primitive culture and very simple, primitive understanding of what the world is. And certainly it was the case, and may still be the case with some. But it was certainly the case, going back, a few hundred years. If we look back to a time when, for instance, there was this British Empire dominating so much of the globe, and including India. My timeline's not so clear, so if anyone can sort of point out when that was from until. But, like for instance, even when Srila Prabhupada was a boy, the British Empire sort of dominated India. And there was this kind of British arrogance that they were the sort of supreme culture, supreme civilization, and that they were helping, the people of India to actually become cultured and educated and sophisticated. That existed, that mentality was there. And it wasn't really commonly known necessarily amongst the wide populace of, the sort of British people who were, sort of dominating at that time, just how sophisticated and how technical the scientific knowledge that was already there within books of knowledge and scriptures, which far by many thousands of years predated, the scientific knowledge which, existed in sort of Western culture at that time. So they were thinking that they were introducing knowledge to a primitive people. But then we look here, and not only here, we look in the Bhagavad Gita, we look throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam and many, many other books of knowledge. There's very, very specific scientific information about the nature of the material world. Even to the point where, our modern day devotee astrologers, and astronomers rather, modern day devotee astronomers, they have sort of looked at the distances which are described in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Vedas in relation with the different planets in our solar system. And, knowledge which was presented many thousands of years ago is presenting the same distances between the different planets as we have only come to learn maybe in the last few hundred years. that knowledge was there. Similarly, the different elements which are there within the body, the different elements which are there within the material world, it's all there in the Vedas, it's all there in the Bhagavatam. So, this scientific understanding was already there. But in the Bhagavatam and in the Vedic presentation, then we learn of something which is not there in our sort of Western or materialistic scientific presentation. What we don't have here that is there in the Bhagavatam is this understanding of what is behind all of this. There are so many ideas and theories and presentations and hypotheses about what is the nature of the material world, what is the nature of the material elements, what is the nature of the material universe, what is the process of creation, what is the process of the functioning of the physical material elements, and so on and so forth. And in many cases, the knowledge which is there is not wrong. We're able to study the material body, we're able to study the material world, and we're able to, based upon observation, hypothesis, conclusion, we're able to actually, or rather hypothesis, observation, and conclusion, we're able to actually come to many, many correct conclusions. That's the reason why we have, of course, some may argue, but that's the reason why we do have many positive, good scientific and medical advances. We do have certain medical cures and treatments which weren't there previously, because we are able to observe the physical body, we are able to see how it's working, we are able to see what it's made up of, we are able to see how it can be treated and how it can be repaired and cured, and so on and so forth. But what is not there in materialistic science, that is there in spiritual science, is this understanding that behind everything and before everything and the cause of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Like it's saying here, the super soul is behind everything. It's actually said that the super soul is in every atom. So this is the thing that we can't see with our physical eyes. We can't see Krishna being behind everything based upon material hypothesis, observation, and conclusion, because we don't have the eyes to see Krishna. We don't have the vision to see Krishna. I was thinking this morning, I went into the bathroom, and on the floor of the bathroom there was like a little insect, like some little, I don't know what it's called, like a little centipede or something, one of these long little bugs that's going around at the moment, and it was crawling around on the floor, and I'm right in front of it, and it had no idea I was there. It can't see me. It may be aware of some movement. It may be aware of some sort of vibration, but it's completely I'm right there in front of it. I could go up and have a conversation with it. It still wouldn't have a clue that I was there. I could be dancing around in my underwear, like in front of the thing, and it would have no idea that I was there. And I'm right in front of it. So this is why? Because it doesn't have the capacity to be able to perceive certain things beyond its own limits. So similarly, we can do so many amazing things in the world, but we have to accept that we are limited in our capacity to be able to see and experience. And no matter how much we would want to, we cannot see or experience beyond the capacity of our physical limitations, mental limitations, intellectual limitations. So therefore, Krishna is right there. Srila Prabhupada would so often say this, Krishna's right here. You can't see him, you can't see Krishna. He's right here. So for one who has transcendental vision, in order to be able to see transcendence, you have to have transcendental vision. You can see so much with your material eyes and your material senses. You can do so much with the material world, with your material eyes and material senses. But what you can see and experience is limited to the sort of physical things which are taking place within the material world. And even then, how much can we really see? How much can we really perceive? We're so conditioned to seeing things in a particular way. Sometimes I was thinking, because I was looking at the alpacas, and sometimes you have these things that come up on the internet where it sort of shows you what the world looks like through the eyes of different creatures. I don't know if you ever seen those kind of things, where it's sort of, if you were looking at the world through the eyes of a dog, or through the eyes of a dolphin, and it's like everything looks different because their eyes are at the side of the head. Their eyes are not in front of the head looking forward, they're at the side. So they perceive the world differently to how we perceive the world. Certain animals could smell us. It's like, you have a shark. A shark can smell a drop of blood from like miles away. We're all limited by our own senses. We're conditioned to think, and especially there's this human arrogance which is there that thinks, I am just the supreme, I'm the supreme conclusion of evolution, But actually, we're limited in so many ways. We don't have the sense of smell that can compete with many animals. We don't have the sense, you have, sometimes you see them here, you see like, kestrels and hawks and things flying overhead. They can be a mile in the sky and they'll see a mouse crawling around on the floor from a mile up. They have superior eyes. Animals have superior, there are animals that have superior hearing, So we're not the ultimate conclusion of everything. But we have this sort of human arrogance that makes us think that, we've got it all worked out, we've got it all sussed out. And in many ways, we've made many, many advancements. There's no doubt about that. We have achieved many wonderful things. Of course, one step forward, two steps back. For all the wonderful achievements that we've made in the name of science and medicine, we've also managed to probably create twice as many diseases as we've managed to cure. We've done as much harm, we've done probably twice as much harm as we've done good in our quest for knowledge and quest for advancement and quest for progress. But we are limited to what we can see and what we can perceive. So we're like insects. Krishna is right there in front of us, but because we don't have the capacity to see Krishna, then we just can't see him. We can't necessarily perceive him. For this reason, Krishna appears. Like, we can meditate on this today, because today's the anniversary of the installation of our deities. So Krishna appears before us in the form of the deity, so he enters into material elements and then resides within those material elements and spiritualizes those elements. And in this way, by his grace, by his blessings, we're able to see him, we're able to touch him, we're able to perceive him. But with transcendental consciousness, with transcendental eyes, with transcendental vision, then we can understand that Krishna is everywhere. So Srila Prabhupada explains that in order to be able to see Krishna, we need to have this transcendental vision. Lord Brahma in the Brahma Samhita, he has this nice expression, eyes tinged with the salve of love. So when our eyes are tinged with the ointment of love, then we can see Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada explained that until you have those eyes tinged with the ointment of love, then, like, I do this, and I can sort of tell that there's someone in front of me with a stripy jumper, blue and yellow stripes, and there's an orange blob over there, a big orange blob with a sort of moving pink thing on top of it. I can see all these colours and shapes and so on. I can sort of tell that Javat's smiling, because Javat has such an oceanic smile that even without my glasses on, I can see that he's smiling. So, I can see John, I can see that someone's there. But because my eyes are defective, very defective in fact, then I need these in front of me. So Srila Prabhupada explains that, if we can't see Krishna, then we need to place this lens in front of our eyes so that we can see Krishna. And that lens, Prabhupada explains that the Guru acts as a transparent via medium to so that we can see Krishna, and also Sadhu and Shastra. So Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, these are the lenses through which we can see Krishna. These are the lenses through which we can appreciate that Krishna is everywhere. So for instance, we read the description of the universal form in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We read chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita, the opulence of the absolute. We read these, we memorize these, and then we can start to see Krishna. The birds are Krishna's artistic sense. The hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones. The trees and the grass are the hairs on his body. We start to appreciate that even within nature, Krishna is there, Krishna is present. And then even beyond that, we can start to look at the arrangements that take place within the material manifestation, like in the in the light of the Bhagavat. Srila Prabhupada explains that you have the ocean of salt water, and then the sun lifts up fresh water but leaves the salt behind. The salt acts as a preservant. The salt keeps the water fresh. It keeps it preserved. And then the sun lifts up the fresh water but leaves the salt behind and deposits it on the tops of the mountains. And then the water then runs down through the rivers and the streams in order to provide nourishment for nature itself, and also for all the living entities who require that water. But it also leaves a deposit of water on the top of the mountain in the form of ice, so that during the summer months, when there are droughts and when there is not sufficient amount of water, then at that time the sun can then melt that water, and at the times when there isn't enough water coming down in the form of rain, it can provide it in the form of this ice which has been deposited there. And all the water once again goes into the ocean, where it's preserved and purified with the salt. So Srila Prabhupada explains that there's all these arrangements there in nature. These are not accidents. They're not happening by chance. We look at the arrangements in the cosmos, the arrangements in the planets, just the different arrangements that are there in nature. There are so many species of life. I've not studied nature's IQ for a while, but there are so many species of life whose very existence depends upon other species of life, or animals whose physical form could not have evolved, can only exist in that form from the very, very beginning. There are so many examples there. That's another seminar for another day. But when we start to study these descriptions in Shastra, when we hear from our Guru, when we hear from sadhus, when we hear from saintly people, then we start to perceive the world differently. The same material elements are there, everything is there, but we start to see that behind those material elements is Krishna. We start to see what is behind everything, what is ultimately giving life and power and potency to everything is the presence of Krishna. So with science is there, medicine is there, these things are all there. But and there is knowledge of these things there. But what is not there that we do find in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and these books of knowledge is this knowledge and understanding of who is behind everything. It is Krishna that is behind of everything. And that's also science. That's the science of self-realization, like our boatman was explaining the other day, that, do you know anything about science? Yes, I know about the science of self-realization. I go to the temple, I hear descriptions of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, so this is the science of self-realization. And it's science in the same way that material science is science. Science is based on hypothesis, observation and experimentation, and then conclusion. So here we see, okay, here is the hypothesis. There is Krishna. We are Krishna's eternal servants. You can see Krishna and you can realize your relationship with Krishna fully. You can, but through direct perception, Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we can perceive this by direct perception of the self, by realization. We get full direct perception of this in the same way that we can directly perceive chemical reactions taking place by seeing them with our eyes, by doing experimentation. So in the same way we can directly perceive through realization within our heart and within our consciousness Krishna and our relationship with Krishna through following the practice of bhakti yoga. You follow these 4 regulative principles. You chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra a fixed number of times every day. You chant that mantra according to the rules and regulations. You observe guarding against the 10 offenses against the holy name. You regularly associate with devotees, regularly hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. Change your diet, so it's a diet of Krishna Prasadam. Perform devotional service according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You follow these instructions. This is the experimentation. You do these things and you will get direct perception of the self through realization. You will see Krishna, you will experience Krishna, you will perceive Krishna, you will be aware of Krishna everywhere. So this is the science of self-realization. And this is the science that is missing. Srila Prabhupada says there are so many wonderful branches of knowledge that exist. It's not that we just throw all material knowledge into the bin. It all has its place. Everything has its place. Medicine has its place. Science has its place. Technology has its place. Art, theatre, music, architecture, gardening, agriculture, everything has its place. All these different sciences and all these different branches of material knowledge, they all have their place. But Krishna consciousness is about adding Krishna to all of this knowledge in order to really give life to this knowledge. So you can have a zillion zeros, but they're all going to be worth 0. It doesn't matter how many zeros you can have. You can have all the zeros in the world. It's all going to add up to the same value, 0. But if you take a single 1 and you put that before all of those zeros, then all of a sudden all of those zeros become worth everything, become worth all the value in the world. So there is so much knowledge in the world, but when that knowledge is devoid of Krishna, then what is ultimately going to be the result of that knowledge, ultimately, in terms of our own existence, in terms of our own consciousness, and in terms of our own, the result of our activities in the material world? What is any of it ultimately going to be worth without Krishna? But when we add Krishna to everything that's already there, then it all becomes worth everything. It becomes priceless. So Srila Prabhupada says, it's heaven on earth. We add Krishna and we can have heaven on earth. So this is the most important science. He says that, in our universities they're teaching all this knowledge, but where is knowledge of the science of the self? Where is knowledge of the science of self-realization? This is the most important science. Reading, writing, maths, and self-realization. These should be the basic branches of knowledge that everyone should have. And then according to our nature, because Krishna says in the Gita, he actually says in the Gita that it's dangerous to not act according to your own nature. He says it's dangerous to not act according to your own nature. So you have your nature. You can't change that. You're going to be inclined towards doing certain things in the world. And Krishna fully endorses that in the Bhagavad Gita. He actually says you have to, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. Even a self-realized person acts according to his own nature. So we may be spiritually advanced, still we have our nature and we have to act according to that nature. We have to work in the world according to our nature. We have to. But add Krishna to that nature in order that it becomes the perfection of that nature. So I'll stop there. It's just past. If anyone online has any questions, comments, type them in quickly, and then we can ask devotees in the temple room if anyone has any questions or comments. Nathan, from anyone? Javat Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you very much for a very interesting class.
When you were talking at the end about all the zeros, just add the born of Krishna. But as we know, there isn't such a thing as zero. That's actually, because that's voidism, and we're not Shrimadis, and actually Krishna is always present in all activities. And in one sense, that's what this verse is about. That all of these apparently material interactions, they're all under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and also because Krishna, as the Super Soul, is reciprocating perfectly with all living entities, then people do argue that, for example, at the moment there's a lot of interfaith dialogue, and in interfaith dialogue they have this expression, for those of many faiths and of none. Because they recognize that even if people don't have a so-called religion or a faith, that doesn't mean that they're not spiritual people, and that they're acting on the principle. So of none means, in one sense, that they recognize that there's an absolute truth or an absolute morality. So I was just thinking that, as people, especially in the time now of COVID and of climate change, so as people are coming together and having more and more dialogue with each other, they kind of have this understanding that there is an absolute sense of equality or of truth or of morality, and that if people can have honest conversations with each other, then there will develop there'll be a kind of force which elevates humanity. I mean, this is common in Western philosophy, going back to Plato and Aristotle. It runs right through Western civilization. So, I was just wondering about that, and it also, sorry if I'm being a bit nebulous with this question, but it also brought up this verse from Bhagavad Gita chapter 12, I think it's verse 3 or 4, says those who control the senses and work for the well-being of all living entities, eventually they attain me. Eventually they will attain me. So I was just wondering about how we can apply this to persons who are actually perhaps describe themselves as atheists or as at least as agnostics or as socialists. But if we take this verse that they're under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So
yeah, but Prabhupada even quoted the verse in the purple there, Maya Jakshena Prakriti Sriyate Satcharatram, that the material world is acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord. So yeah, Krishna is there behind everything, but we're the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Krishna may be there, but are we conscious of Krishna being there? So Srila Prabhupada's Pranam mantra is very interesting, which he himself composed. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Vishesha Sunyavari Pastichadesha Tarani. I offer my obeisances to you, spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami. You are delivering the Western countries from, what's the translation? You're delivering the Western countries which are full of voidism and impersonalism, nirvishesha sunyavadi. So Krishna may be there behind everything, but if people are ignoring Krishna or if people have forgotten Krishna, then they're not Krishna conscious. Krishna may be there. There may be some sort of idea that there's something behind everything, so that's good, that there's some kind of idea behind everything. But when Srila Prabhupada first came to London, reporters, they held a press conference, I think, in Heathrow Airport, and the reporters asked Srila Prabhupada, why have you come? And Prabhupada said, I have come to teach you what you have forgotten, which is knowledge of God, knowledge of Krishna. So Krishna may be there behind everything, but if we're either ignoring Krishna, or and then also we know that, Prabhupada established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and someone said, call it the International Society for God Consciousness, because that will be something more socially acceptable. And Prabhupada said, no, Krishna Consciousness, because that's scientific. So we may have some idea, and that's good. And Prabhupada also encouraged, if you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. He venerated Jesus Christ. So there is definitely some advancement, and like you're saying, that when acting for the welfare of all, then eventually such people will attain me. But eventually can be quite a broad category. Eventually may mean a very, very long time. It may mean many, many lifetimes, or it may not, as the case may be. So, we really want to try and introduce this specific science of self-realization, or at least help people to understand what, like for instance, if people are, I was actually thinking it'd be a wonderful thing to have the Bible as it is, or the Quran as it is, and actually write a commentary, like a Vaishnava commentary, showing, verse by verse. I mean, I'm not going to be the one to do it, but if someone's like a biblical scholar and a Vaishnava, you can actually show how practically everything that's there in, for instance, the biblical teachings can be corroborated with the Vedic texts, but give an explanation for it, saying this is actually what it means, because some of it's like, I remember once I was on Sankirtan and I went into a church to rest. I just needed to sleep. I was so tired, and I read the Bible, and I was thinking, okay, let's read a bit of the Bible. Come on, let's check it out. It's like I just hadn't a clue what was. That's not meant disrespectfully. It was just, that's why even the Bhagavad Gita, you read certain editions of the Bhagavad Gita that have been translated in a particular way or not commented upon, and it's like, well, what does any of it really mean? So that's why we need these glasses. We need the transparent via medium that can actually show us what's there in front of us. We may have certain ideas, we may have certain inclinations, but we also need guidance and directions, how to sort of channel and move those in the right direction, move things in the right direction. Otherwise, we do risk it being this sort of impersonalist hodgepodge. It's all one. Nothing, I think interfaith has its value, but at the same time, we have to be careful that it doesn't just become, we're all the same, we're all one, we're all practicing the same thing, everyone's doing the same thing, but everyone's not doing the same thing, and it's not all the same teachings, and it's not all the same philosophy. So there needs to be dialogue there to sort of, and guidance to sort of get things, really there for the benefit of everyone. Is that okay? Yes. Anything online? Anything else we should really stop with? If there's anything quick, yeah. No.
I was reading something, and it was Krishna was talking about how he gives us spiritual eyes to be able to see him. So I thought that was really nice, and I understood it as given our endeavours, whatever endeavour we make, whatever we endeavour to do, then the more Krishna will give us the spiritual eyes, so we can see him everywhere and everything.
And also, how does Krishna do that? Because, okay, Krishna's going to give us spiritual eyes. We think, Krishna's going to do something to my eyes, but Krishna sends into our lives inspiration in the form of sadhu sangha to give us that vision. The vision comes through Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So sometimes we may be reading something and all of a sudden something just jumps out of the page and it's, wow, that's just amazing, that's answered exactly, or that clarified something, or it answered something, or it explained something, and it's like Krishna's speaking, Krishna's giving you those eyes. Krishna is no different from Shastra. Sometimes our mentors or our gurus may say something that just changes us. It's like I was when I was speaking today, and I remembered something that Prabhupada Bani had said in class 25 years ago. Sometimes that happens. I'm sure everyone here has experienced that there are certain things that they've heard in classes that have just locked themselves into their minds. Just somehow or other it just clicks at that moment, and you never forget it. And it can be the simplest, even seemingly inconsequential thing, but it's just something that you hear or read, either in Shastra or from a devotee, that just locks itself in your mind, and you can remember it word for word. You remember where you were when you heard it, you remember what the weather was like, you remember everything, because Krishna was speaking to you, Krishna was letting you see or understand something at that moment. So then we have to listen out for Krishna. He's always trying to talk to us, but the more attentive we are to him, especially to chanting his names, then the more attentive we'll be when he speaks to us through devotees, through Shastra, through nature, through so many other things. We'll start to hear Krishna speaking to us.
It always happens when there's something going on and someone says something and it's just, they've said it just at the exact right time and the exact right thing to say.
Yeah, Krishna's always trying to talk to us, actually constantly. He's always 24 hours a day he's trying to speak to us. It's just we need to learn to be tuned in to what he has to say. Okay, I've gone over time. I better stop or I will get myself in trouble. I'm probably already going to get myself in trouble. Okay, Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Shri Kodanitai Maya Pushashi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vaishnava Sangha ki jai, Jai Gaura Ramananda.
Haribol.